Good evening, wherever you are joining in the world. Welcome to Monday Mentor. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and create empowered teams. So everybody is whole, work is a joy, and organizations flourish. And every Monday, I am here offering some tidbits for you to help you grow in your leadership so you are an impactful and empowered leader that helps develop a really empowered team. And I'm super excited about our guest today. Her name is Hannah Hadsma. On a Monday, I should have done my work before. Before I bring Hannah on and introduce you, I just want to let you know I've got a retreat coming up at the end of June for women leaders who are interested in digging in deep on leadership mindset, on leadership values, and really operationalizing those in your leadership to help you grow a great team. So if you're ever interested in that, just shoot me a DM and we can talk. So Hannah, I'm so excited to introduce you to Hannah. She is an award-winning filmmaker. She has been a creative director in several places. She is a mom. She is working cross-culturally as well. And she is just a delight of a human. And I am so excited to have her today as our Monday mentor. Let's welcome Hannah.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so happy. So last week we had 2 weeks ago, I had somebody joining us from Croatia. No, she was in Crete. And now you're joining us from Hawaii. We're just spanning the globe right here.
I am, as you can see with my beautiful background. This is not a Zoom background. This is real.
It's real, folks. So just stay tuned just to enjoy the beauty of Hannah and her background. I'm so glad that you could join us today. I would love for you to start with a little bit of your story. Where have you been? How did you get to where you are and in helping creative leaders in this space?
Absolutely. So my background, I actually started as a filmmaker and as a writer working out in Los Angeles, doing documentary films and narratives and commercials, which I loved. It was amazing. I obviously had leadership because I was directing a set, but my natural bent was always around collaboration. So I wasn't thinking about this sort of like hierarchy or being a leader, but it was more about, we're making this, creative thing. So I was like, I'm an artist. Like, that's all I really care about at this point in my life. And just making sure that everybody is fulfilled and doing their part, because it takes so many people to actually make a film, right? And but that was sort of the goal of where I was, I would say probably in my 20s. And then as I moved, I had an opportunity to step into a role at a marketing agency. They needed a director, and from there worked my way up into a creative director. And then all of a sudden found myself actually managing a team and managing, not only like PTO for them, but also managing, their career growth and internal conflicts. And how do we, we inherited a team and now we need to add different dynamics to the team. And I felt like, oh my goodness, I was not prepared for this. I was a really great creative, a really great storyteller, visual designer, but oh my goodness, now all of a sudden I had to be on the hook, if you will, for all of these people. And as much as I like people, actually, I just totally felt unprepared. And so there was a lot of learning, like on the job, which I'm sure most people have. But I realized in that space, particularly as I had just become a mother, I'd come back from maternity leave and had this big promotion, and everyone was like, yeah, this is so great. And now all of a sudden I'm juggling like being a new mom, managing a team, dealing with some internal conflicts as well. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is not how it's supposed to be. And so actually that is the impetus for what I do now, which is have a community coaching program called the Creative Circle that helps women leaders thrive in their life and in their work, and really giving them not just training around leadership, but understanding who they are as leaders, how they can show up and build these incredible teams, but also looking at it from a holistic standpoint. Because that's the other thing. A lot of times, you take a leadership course and it would just be all about, okay, this is how you give feedback. This is, this whole sort of like structured thing, but it didn't really address the whole person as a leader, right? Thinking about you and your life, and thinking about you as your leader, as a leader, and what that looks like, from people to processes to your own leadership narrative. And then also thinking about it from your own skill set. Because what happens a lot of times whether you're a creative or if you were, I don't know, an accountant or something else, oftentimes you get so far out of the work that you actually start to lose the skills that got you there. And that's a scary actually place to be. So we focus too on helping to make sure that we are continuing to grow in our creative skill set. So that's my passion. That's what I love to do, is just making sure that we are helping the women who are in leadership, but also creating a pipeline of other creative leaders, particularly women. There are only 11% of females that are creative directors worldwide. So we have an enormous gender gap in this arena. And I'm super passionate about helping fill that gap. And that's why I created the Creative Circle.
There's so much goodness in your story. I mean, just as, as a human and what you contribute to the world, but even the idea of we have to be whole leaders. And that's, I think, why we get along so well, because that's also what I am wanting to make sure when I'm going into an organization or this retreat that we're doing. It's who are you as a holistic person? Because you're not leaving that stuff at home watching Netflix while you go to work. Right. Like, you are a whole human with all the things, and they come with you. And that old phrase, if wherever you go, there you are, is very true. And you can't be a leader and try to pretend you're somebody who doesn't have, 3 kids at home, 4 kids, you have 2, I have 4, like, we can't pretend that doesn't exist. And men can't either. So like, it's not something that's actually possible. And I think that's why the work you do is so, so important. And so I'm curious, if you are watching, if you're here live, let us know that you're here live in the comments, or if you're watching the replay. Have you ever been in this place where you have been promoted because of your great skill into all of a sudden now, like, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for the careers of other people? Like, that place can be really scary. And so I'd love for you to talk about when you were thinking about helping creatives, will you just define that for us? Because some people are like, I'm not creative because I don't paint, and it's kind of a limited thing. Right. When you think of a creative leader, what is that to you?
For me personally, I'm thinking about it from the perspective of I am leading a team of creative people. And I'll say that's like a wide variety. Obviously, my background is in literally the creative arts. So whether it's film or at an agency, when I'm probably leading art directors and copywriters and things like that. But I would even say in other organizations, and by the way, agency, whether it was external, or I've also worked, at in-house. So you have much more of a corporate structure, and you're not just working with creative people in an agency fashion, but you're also having to work with other people that are, your internal clients, if you will, colleagues in this way. And I would say maybe they're not as creative, like they wouldn't consider themselves as creative, but I think that there's creativity really in every kind of aspect, and you just don't even think about it. Just being a leader and thinking about team culture, there's creativity in that. We bring creativity to the work that we do. So I think there's sort of this broad range of this idea of what a creative leader is. I'm obviously, like I said, coming from actually having to manage teams of creative people, which is a whole different thing in and of itself, because as you know, being the Enneagram Wonder Woman that you are, typically you're dealing with 3s and 4s. And I would say maybe, kind of in that range of, this is sort of like what we typically put in a box of create. And I'm actually a 4. So there's just things where, maybe you're not dealing with an 8 who would be what you would consider like a typical manager. But I think that there's all these pieces here that you can look at and say, look, it doesn't matter. We can bring creativity to everything that we do, everything in terms of even looking at leadership, thinking about innovation, thinking about, even innovating your processes. There's creativity that we need to bring in actually to solve some of these really big issues. So whether you're actually managing creative people, or whether you are just wanting to use creativity honestly as a game changer for you, and bringing that in and infusing that into your methods, I think that there's 2 ways to kind of look at this idea of creative leadership.
Yeah, I think both of those are so important, because there are people who are naturally creative in that art space. But I think the people who got us to the moon, NASA, there's a lot of creativity there. We just tend to call it huge innovation on that side. Like, exactly. It's really, I know our friend Leo would have some technical things. Leo's been on the show and talking about the difference between creativity and innovation, but there's so much overlap there. And I just think about when I was a kid, one of my favorite things that I did was creative problem solving. So when we did CPS, we had the structure and framework, and I still use some of those things that I learned in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade creative problem solving as a leader. And because really so much of what you do as a leader is identify and solve problems. And you might not be the one who is the solution provider, but you're the one that's identifying what solution needs to happen. And that's a very creative space, whether or not, like you said, if you're an accountant, if you're an engineer, once you start managing people, you've got to, you're solving different types of problems, which kind of brings in that need for creativity. So tell me a little bit about what you mean when you talk about moving into leadership. You're moving outside of the space that kind of what got you here won't get you there idea.
Exactly.
What does that mean for you when you talk about being a leader without losing your soul? What is that concept?
So I think that it's a known fact. A lot of people end up in leadership and they're like, what in the world? Like, this is not what I signed up for.
Like, how did I get here?
Yeah, you're exactly. And they feel like I'm just hopping from meeting to meeting to meeting, putting out fire after fire after fire. And at the end of the day, they're like, I'm exhausted. Like, I haven't actually produced anything. I have literally just been, the person that is dealing with all the problems or being in a meeting. And it feels like a waste of time, to be honest with you. And as a creative, I'd say more specifically, I joke and I'm like, how can you do this without losing your soul? Because the reality is, the further you get away from the making, oftentimes as a creative, you begin to really feel like this tension point of, I'm not doing the thing that I actually love. You might actually enjoy, and I enjoy working with people and empowering them. And that's actually a skill set and a gift that I enjoy. But if I am not ever creating anything, then I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to hit burnout pretty soon, right? So what I like to tell people and sort of coaching in this area is, when you're taking on and you're making this shift, you've got to really, really sort of be self-aware and realize, like, I have to do some practical things in order to still continue to feed that creativity and that part in me, that when I am going from meeting to meeting and solving some of these bigger problems, that I am still tapping into that space and the thing that I love, so that I can lead from a really whole, like we talked about, whole space where, I'm not having this, tension, and it's not coming out in these ways, with my team or with things, external factors. Right. And so for me, there's a few tips that I like to think about, really just practical things that you can do to make sure that you don't lose your soul as you were in this process of going from leadership and sort of away from the making. And those look like, the number one thing is, I say, always keep yourself in the work. So I know like probably 85%
What do you mean by
of your time,
in the work? Tell me what that means.
So yeah, so it's saying always can keep yourself on at least a project, right? At least one thing. Pick one project that you can still do. And I'd say, like, for me, it's like doing it from start to finish, not just coming in and overseeing it and making sure everyone's doing their tasks and it's working out, but like from the beginning of saying, I'm going to help with the ideation and the concepting, and I'm going to see this thing to completion. And like I said, probably 85% of my time is, managing the team and going to meetings, but I try to keep that margin of, no, I'm going to keep one project that I can still, pour my creativity into, but also it helps me so I don't lose the skill sets, right, of thinking about it from that way. And it makes me a better leader because I have empathy and compassion, because when my person that I'm leading is like, crap, I'm running into this issue with, something I'm trying to make or design, I'm like, yeah, man, I did that last week. I had that issue. Let me help you. So it actually connects you closer with the team. And it, there's just so many good things about how to continue to make sure that you are feeding yourself in that way.
That's a really good one. I think about, so my first job, I was a music teacher. I taught kindergarten through 8th grade music. And when I stopped doing that and I was leading a school as a school leader, I felt that. I was like, I'm with teachers all the time, which was fantastic, and leading the teachers, but I wasn't with the students. And so for me, that project actually became lunch duty, and doing funny things at the end of lunch duty where we would just, when kids are done eating lunch and there's still 5 minutes left and they can't go outside, and, and doing fun things like that. But like you said, it gave me so much empathy as well for the teachers who had to teach all day and do lunch duty and be with kids. And it was such a powerful experience for me to remind me why I was leading teachers was because of these students. Like, and I could see them face to face. And so I'd connect with that so much of how much that helped me in my school leadership days.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So staying in the work, getting a project, seeing it from start to finish, connecting with people, and building empathy. What's the second one?
It's shifting your creativity into creating culture. So we talked about everyone as a leader is going to have to create culture. So, and you can be really intentional on how you create culture and really creative. And so for me, I know like coming up with, making vision boards with my team, or thinking about like internal design competitions, or how, other creative fun ways that we can connect as a team. So for me, it's like pouring that creativity and those ideas into how can we create a really creative team dynamic. And so that also helps, again, you not lose your soul, because you are sort of channeling this stuff into creating really great team culture.
Yeah. What other tips do you have for us? Because I feel like there are more than just two.
Yeah, I do. I have two more.
Okay.
So the other thing is, I would say, is finding and hiring the right people to fill in your gaps, right? So like when I first shifted from an agency into an in-house, as an in-house creative, I will tell you, oh my goodness, I ended up realizing, I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no project managers, zero. And so that was my first hire. I was like, I cannot do the work that I want to do as a creative leader if I don't have the support and the systems in place from a project management standpoint. So I will tell you, again, get the right people on your team. It will help you not lose your soul, because you will oftentimes find yourself, okay, I gotta I see like a boat that's like sinking, and you're plugging this hole and this hole and this hole and this hole and this, but at the end of the day, you feel like, oh my gosh, the boat is still gonna sink. That's what oftentimes happens. So, but when you get those right people in place, right, you don't have those same holes. And also, you're not the one trying to plug all the holes, right?
Totally.
So that is another thing that helps.
To plug the holes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then my last tip is really to make margin for your own creativity outside of work. So I remember this tension point of being when I moved into the agency world. I was like, I can't do it. I don't want to like sell my soul to the man. I'm an artist, and I didn't want to do like quote unquote client work. You know what I'm saying? But what I've realized is like, all right, client work obviously pays the bills. There's wonderful brands to work for. I've grown in my mindset. However, I still prioritize outside creative work that is literally just for the art's sake of the thing that brings me joy. And it gives me an outlet. And I'd say for anyone, thinking about what are the things outside of work that brings you joy, and still prioritize that. And that goes back to what we were talking about, Jen, about the whole self thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the joy into work. So that's the other thing. Those are sort of the four main things that I think any creative leader can do to make sure that they are, not losing their soul in the process of their leadership journey.
It's so good, because the holistic approach that both of us really go for is what creates really great leaders. Because if you compartmentalize, you're actually fracturing yourself. I have a talk that I give on burnout that's actually called "What's the Soul Got to Do with It?" And part of what we talk about it is like, think of all the words that we use to describe stress. They're all about brokenness. And so when we're coming together, when we're looking at ourselves as a whole person, that's how we avoid burnout, when things are aligned to our values, our skill set, our desires and needs, our zones of genius, like the things that you're really, really good at, or the things that you're just competent at. Like, yeah, I can build a website, but my goodness, it's so much better when I outsource that. Like, that is not Jen Whitmer's great skill. And, one of the funny things where you're talking, I recently started at the beginning of the year, like, I need some more time away from my desk and just allowing space. And so I just started playing the piano again. Now, I am not a skilled piano player. I passed the proficiency exam in order to teach music. So that means I am proficient, but it has developed so much more space for me just to sit and do something that feels completely unrelated, but actually adds to my wholeness. And I find it a little bit like, Sherlock Holmes, when he's got an idea, he starts playing the violin. And I was like, it's a little bit like that. Like, it's untangled some things. It's been a really great process. So just stories to kind of confirm those tips are really effective in keeping ourselves whole and being a leader in a way that starts with ourselves first. It's so powerful.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so we have to stop because I just looked at the time, and one of these days I'm just gonna set a timer or something so I stop going over. But tell the people where to find you, how they can keep up with you, connect with Creative Circle, or just follow you online.
Absolutely.
Lots of things.
So right here, if you want to grab that QR code, that is a free guide that I have for you all around some of these tips and tricks actually to think about how to cultivate your creativity. So it's a wonderful guide. Check that out. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's Hannah Hamza Creative. And also my website is hannahhamza.com. You can drop a line there, and I can give you more info about the Creative Circle. So we just are an awesome, powerful community of creative women who are doing big things in the world. So I'm honored to be a part of leading that, and would love it if anyone is interested in knowing more about it.
Yeah, Hannah is a great follow. She always includes lovely things about her family, and you get to see some of Hawaii, which is fantastic. And just the things that you offer in the world are really wonderful. And so I always appreciate the things that you share. So thank you for being so generous with your time today and
absolutely
sharing those great 4 tips. Before we close, can you just tell us the 4 tips one more time, like rapid fire?
Oh gosh, you're working my brain out. It's still early Hawaii time.
It's so early.
Okay, here we go. So here are the 4 tips. Number 1, keep yourself in the work. Find a project and see it through. Number 2, use your creativity to cultivate culture. Number 3, find and hire the right people to fill in the gaps for you and support you. And then number 4, make margin for your own creativity outside of work.
Excellent. Those are excellent tips for any type of leader. Even if you're like, I'm not a designer, that's not what I do. Those tips are still important for you as well. Because all of us, we have skills that get us somewhere, and then we have to learn how to expand those to help other people. And those are things that will be so powerful for you. So I highly recommend those tips to creatives and those of you who don't know that you're actually also creative. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next week, it will be a Jen Whitmer solo episode. I'm going to be talking about why self-awareness gets you paid more and why that's important. And we've talked a little bit about that today. You have to know where your holes are in order to fill them. That's a really important piece of self-awareness. So thank you again, Hannah, for being here. I appreciate your time. You getting up so early to join us. Was really, really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next week. Bye.